One game I heard nothing but glowing praise for since it released back in September was 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. The most surprising thing was how much people were talking about its story. 13 Sentinels developer Vanillaware is mostly known for 2D action games with okay plots, so to hear how good the story was came as a bit of a shock. Like way too many people this year, I passed up on 13 Sentinels at launch and waited for a sale to play it. And boy, once I finally dove in, I understood immediately why so many people were going bonkers for this game. So in today's video, I want to talk spoiler-free about 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim and why I think it's the best story in gaming this year. And if you like JRPGs and games like 13 Sentinels, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Now, to avoid spoilers, I'm going to talk about the broad strokes of the stories to at least give some context, but without spoiling the story at all. Now, as the title might imply, there are 13 main characters whose stories interweave throughout the game. Each has the special ability to pilot giant robots called Sentinels, and they use them to fight off invading aliens called Kaiju. Now, most of the game will take place in 1985 Japan, but there is a heavy emphasis on time travel throughout the story. You'll go back to 1940s Japan and even into the far future. And honestly, that's about as specific as I want to get to avoid spoilers, so let's talk about the game's structure and why I think it helps draw you in even more. So 13 Sentinels is broken up into 3 distinct segments. The first is Remembrance, which are the adventure-style segments where you experience most of the story. The second is Destruction, where you'll participate in real-time strategy-style battles. And the last is Analysis, which unlocks small story tidbits the more you play, and you get more information on characters and different plot points. Now, when you start the game, you only have access to one character, but the more you play through the game, the more characters you unlock, and eventually you'll have access to all 13 characters' story. Admittedly, the prologues for the first few characters can feel kind of slow as nothing too significant happens, but they serve as important context for that character and others that you'll interact with later on. As you unlock more characters, you're given the option to continue down one character's story path or try out a new one. And here's where the real genius of 13 Sentinels comes in. Certain characters' stories will hit a dead end until you progress far enough with another character's story, or until you've finished enough battles in the Destruction section. This is genius for a few reasons. The first is that these dead ends usually conclude with some type of huge cliffhanger or new story revelation that you'll feel compelled to continue playing. The second reason is that you're forced to play a new character you may not know much about, and it gives you the opportunity to fall in love with that character. Now, you might have preconceived notions of a character based on how you interacted with them in another character's story. For example, you start off the game as Jiro Karabe and you find one of your classmates Iori Fuyusaka sleeping on her desk. Someone makes a comment that she's been doing this a lot lately, so you, the player, might assume things about her from this very short interaction. But when you have the opportunity to play as Iori, her sleeping gets put into context, and that makes you appreciate her character in a whole new way.
She always seems to be sleeping. It's odd. And then she shows up in my dreams. I can't help but be a little curious about her.
And this happens over and over and over again. 13 Sentinels is like peeling away layers of an onion with revelations that seemingly never end. And just when you feel like the story is starting to lose momentum or you think you have everything figured out, you're thrown a curveball and you'll just be sucked in all over again. At one point, I was certain I had the plot figured out. I thought 13 Sentinels showed its hand way too early, but it turned out to be a red herring and I was completely wrong. And the reason why I was wrong was absolutely mind-blowing. The story has so many things going on, and when a totally new concept got introduced 10 hours in, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Admittedly, I love a good mystery, and 13 Sentinels has so many of them that I just never wanted to stop playing. And this all works because each character's story is so compelling. Despite there being 13 characters, there really isn't one that's a throwaway. They're all interesting in their own way and play pivotal roles in the bigger overarching plot. Some characters are more sinister than at first glance, or even the total opposite, and that's what makes peeling away each layer of the story so much fun. I think what really helps is allowing each character to breathe in certain chapters and showcasing smaller moments. For example, in one you'll be with your friends getting snacks after school, or in another you'll be going to a buddy's house to play video games. Broadly speaking, these have no real impact on the plot overall, but they help ground each character and give them more depth. 13 Sentinels also maintains a great sense of momentum due to how short some of these individual story chapters can be. Some can be as short as 10 minutes. So while it may seem intimidating that the adventure segments take up so much of the game, they're broken up into nice digestible chunks so you'll never feel overwhelmed. After hearing all this, I'm sure the story sounds intimidating, confusing, and maybe even incomprehensible. How could weaving back and forth between 13 characters' stories make any kind of coherent sense? Well, I'm here to tell you that it does, and that's the real brilliance of the writing. Not only does it perfectly pace out big bombshells, but it also manages to make sense somehow. So if you've been avoiding this game because the story seems impossibly complex, don't worry. As long as you're paying attention, it'll all come together and blow your mind.
What the heck? Is that a robot?
He summoned a Sentinel.
And while I loved other stories in gaming this year, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim easily takes the crown as my absolute favorite. I just loved the mysteries and all the different twists and turns until the very end. It was totally worth it. So how about you? What was your favorite story in gaming this year? Let me know in the comments below. Now, something that a lot of people don't know is that I do a weekly JRPG podcast on a separate channel, so if you're into podcasts, make sure you head over there and check out the latest episode and subscribe. And be sure you're subscribed here as well if you're not already, as next week I'll be releasing my top 5 JRPGs of the year video and you won't want to miss it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.